There's a certain psychology that traders who never lose have. And by never lose, I don't mean they never lose a trade. I'm talking about they never lose themselves. Once you have a back-tested system, then the only person that you're battling with is yourself. And that is one of the hardest and most overlooked aspects of trading. So in this video, I want to go over the 4 pillars of trading psychology. I'll talk about some of the mistakes that I've made, which we probably all have made together, but most importantly, how I was able to overcome them and what steps I put into place. So starting off with the first one, it's going to be self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is probably one of the most important characteristics just to have as a human. But in trading, it's also equally as important, and I would say even more important, because the amount of times where you can take a very good trade and then you will oversize into the next trade. And if that next trade is a loss, then already you're going to start feeling that mental toll on you, where you're going to start losing yourself, where if you had systems, you had rules that you were following, once you start taking those losses, that's when those rules really come into play. But if you keep trading and trading and you're taking trades that are out of your system, that are not following your rules, then you end up in this sort of death spiral of sorts where you're stuck to the charts. You don't want to go out. You want to see what price is going to do. You're so focused on trying to catch that next trade that you completely lose yourself in the charts. And what ends up happening as a byproduct is you will take a very big hit on your P&L, and sometimes you might even blow your account. So when it comes to understanding yourself better, there's a few things that you can do and that I do myself. The first thing is I actually have a journal that is specifically for my emotions. Now, for this journal, it's more on my day to day. So, when I wake up, how am I feeling? When I'm at the charts, when I'm doing my analysis, when I'm doing my morning prep, like how am I feeling in general? Is there anything else going on around my life? Did I have some good sleep? So like all of these things, just really understanding my mental state. That way, when I'm reviewing it at the end of the week, and I see like, okay, on Tuesday, I wrote in the morning that I had like terrible sleep. And if I took a trade that day, then I can be like, okay, well, every day I was having bad sleep. I could see that my trading performance was declining compared to the average and the rest of the week. So that's one aspect that you can do. Then the other aspect comes into the journaling of the trade life cycle. So that means your trade planning, your trade execution, your trade management, and then your trade closure. So all of those 4 things, I try to journal as much as possible my emotions throughout that trade. Because if I make a mistake, so for example, let's say in the trade closure, price is reaching my TP level that I've had planned, but then I'm thinking, okay, price can go lower. So what do? I remove my take profit orders, and then I'm looking for lower prices. So in that moment, I'm writing down like, I think price is going to go lower. Why might I think that? Possibly I'm being greedy. So the whole point is you're writing down your emotions throughout every decision that you're making. That way, when you step away from the desk and you're actually doing your review, you can be like, okay, you have a clear head, you're doing your review, and it's like, all right, I plan to take profit at a certain level. And then I look at my notes. I then got rid of my take profit orders and I'm looking for lower. Why did I do that? Well, you're likely being greedy. So at least I can understand what are the emotions I was feeling, what was the effect on the charts, and then how was I impacted by those decisions for the next trades? Because sometimes your psychology in one trade can transfer over to the next one and the next one, unless you're able to break away from that sort of death spiral loop. The second pillar of psychology is discipline. Now, I could tell you that for discipline, you just need to have like very strict rules, like a pre-trade checklist, like what do I want to see before I enter the trade? Making sure that if price reaches my TP, I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to enter in and out of trades during execution, which would just mess up my overall P&L. So I could just say that that's discipline. You just have to follow your rules. But to me, discipline lies within. You have to ask yourself this one question, which is like, why are you trading? Or for who are you doing this for? Because if you can really understand what is driving you as a person to want to make it in trading and become like the best version of yourself that you can be, then if that drive isn't strong enough and you don't want it enough, then I think no matter what rules you put in place, you will simply lack the motivation to follow them. But if you can tie the why that you're doing this to something just beyond you, then I feel like that drive that you have will help every day when you wake up. Like you remind yourself, like, hey, why am I doing this? For who am I doing this for? And I feel like when you constantly remind yourself of that why, it helps you a lot more with staying motivated and wanting to follow your rules, because you know that if you continue to do that, then you could become like a great fucking trader. So understanding the why to me is the most important aspect of discipline. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video so far. Now that that's out the way, we can get into the third pillar of trading psychology, which is trusting your system. Now, what I mean by trusting your system is if you have a 50% win rate, you have to accept that you're going to be wrong quite often, and sometimes multiple times in a row. Think of it like a coin flip, heads or tails. You're thinking, okay, if I flip it once, it's going to be heads. If I flip the other, it's going to be tails because it's 50-50. But the reality is that that 50-50 is based off of a large sample size. So, and that's the same concept with your trading. If you have a 50% win rate in trading, you have to accept that you might take 5, maybe 6 losses in a row. But the only thing that matters is that, are you following your process, right? Are you respecting those rules that you put in place? Because if that's the case, then you've done nothing wrong. And that's simply part of the game. That's why, like, you don't want to be looking at your data like solely based off of like a small sample size. You want to wait till you have a very large sample size. That way that data isn't skewed. So for trusting your strategy, that just takes time. And there's no secret to it. Like for me, it took me a long time to trust my strategy, because especially as a swing trader, it takes time. You know, I'm not taking multiple trades a day. But one of the things that helped me with just trusting my strategy more is reviewing either the trades that I've taken or just other trades that I might have missed, and building up a whole journal with like every single trade that is part of my strategy, and breaking it down so much to the point where I'm reliving that trade as if I took it myself, right? How am I going to execute it? How am I going to manage it? All of these things where I'm just building up the repetitions. Like once or twice a day, I'm just going to pick a random trade from my journal and just review it and review it. That way, when I'm actually taking the trade itself, I feel like I've taken hundreds of them before, and I already have much more confidence in my own strategy. The final pillar is process over outcome. Now, what I mean by this is that when you first start trading, your motivations are probably going to be outcome based, you know, just like they were for me. But that shift that happened, you know, 1.5 years into my trading, was when I started to distance myself from the outcome of trades and instead focused on the process and the foundation. So it's that mental shift that you have to do where it's like, look, I'm not here at the start to make money. I'm here to prove to myself that I can do the necessary things, such as building a foundation, building a playbook, building my pre-trade checklist, and like just refining my process in general. Because if I can focus all my attention on building that core foundation, then the outcome of a trade, that's going to be a byproduct of it. So outcome is simply a byproduct of you having a very strong foundation and process. So you have to switch your thinking from like the money, and instead it's like, okay, I have my strategy. Or even if I don't have my strategy, it's like, I'm going to build a playbook. I'm going to understand, you know, how am I going to execute a trade and why? How am I going to manage a trade and why? Where am I going to close my trades and why? All these things, you have to be able to explain them in like a couple lines to someone. Because if you struggle to explain, you know, what your strategy is, what are your rules based around that strategy, then how do you expect to consistently follow those rules yourself and then get a consistent outcome with those trades? So just shift your focus from outcome based to process based, and then see what kind of changes you get over the coming weeks or months. As always, if you found some value in the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.